The last time the U.S. was in the World Cup, 2014.
Yeah.
They were led by Jurgen Klinsmann.
Yeah.
A German.
Yeah.
What did you think about the men's national team going to get a German to lead the American squad?
It's an interesting one because the mentality, I think, generally of the American population, there's a great deal of pride,
yes,
and rightly so, in being American, in representing America, and so it's quite interesting when he was appointed. Clearly an incredibly successful player, won the World Cup, played in other World Cups.
For Germany.
For Germany.
Yep.
Played in that 1990 World Cup when they won it as West Germany. Played in the 94 World Cup that was here and lived in California. So built a life for himself and his family in California. So I think his son has been involved with the youth national teams as a goalkeeper.
Okay.
So related a lot to the American people. So it made sense. It was a good appointment. I remember the first time the English national team appointed quote unquote foreign coach, and there was a great resistance to that, but it turned out to be successful, relatively successful. So I think it's a case of US soccer just being professional, as they are, excellent organisation. And hiring what they considered to be the best person for the job. Yeah. And I think he had a wonderful tenure. Yeah, he was great.
But we've seen that in other sports where other countries will go get American coaches. Like in the sport of basketball, Coach Calipari, I believe he coached the Dominican Republic national team. Like they go get other coaches. So I was actually impressed when they went and got a German. I know it ruffled a few feathers here in America. And Klinsmann himself ruffled a few feathers. For one, he wanted all of his American players. He felt they should be playing overseas in the top leagues. Yeah. That I can understand. And also he made a comment when Kobe Bryant was towards the twilight of his career, and Kobe Bryant was still given a lucrative contract from the Lakers. And Mr. Klinsmann said, only in America does that happen, where you kind of paying for somebody for past work. And this was around the time when Klinsmann had cut Landon Donovan from the national team. Landon Donovan, who I believe has scored the most goals in U.S. men's national history. Like, America kind of wanted like a sentimental pick for Landon Donovan and be on the team. Klinsmann said, no, he's not good enough anymore. Yeah. You know, only here in America do you guys worship these stars and praise them for past work. And when I look at international soccer, the sport always is bigger than the individual athlete. But in America, it may be the inverse. We kind of do hold on to our stars too long, you know, past their prime. How do you feel about that theory? Is that a fair assessment?
I think so, yeah.
Because even with Beckham, I remember Beckham, he kind of got shipped out of England, didn't it? Like, we're done with you.
He went to Real Madrid from Manchester United. And then into the MLS, but in the MLS off-season, he would still go back and join these massive clubs, AC Milan in Italy, PSG in France. So and you're right, those clubs wouldn't have signed him unless he could contribute on the field, and he did, and he still could, and he did, obviously. So it's an interesting one. Yeah, I don't think you would see that occur certainly in European soccer, for example. But I think Klinsmann was, just sort of switching gears on Klinsmann's tenure, he was the head coach of the national team, and then along that path he was also given the title of technical director. Okay. And part of the technical director's remit is to oversee and drive football at every level. And as you say, Klinsmann was very supportive of players going to play in Europe, because you'd be playing for top clubs, you're playing in the Champions League, you'd be playing for and against the best players in the world. Right. And he felt, I think, that would make the US players better, so he encouraged it. As technical director, he attempted to influence the youth system and the path to the professional game. And I think he met some resistance in that. And it's an interesting one, because there are, as with any debate, there are different parties, there are different points of view. But the role of the NCAA as a pathway to the professional game can be argued that for that elite 0.5% of men's soccer players, the NCAA is detrimental.
Wow.
Because, again, to repeat for context, we're referring to men's soccer.
Yes.
And we're referring to, let's say you have the players we talked about that are currently playing in Europe and came up through the academy systems in Europe, Pulisic's, etc. If Christian Pulisic has been at Chelsea's academy for several years and he's 18 years old and he signs a professional contract with Chelsea, or could be a German club, Gio Reyna at Borussia Dortmund, for example, if they sign that contract at 18 and begin playing for the first team at 18, in some cases they play earlier, 17, 16 if they're good enough. Arsenal in England last week played a player that was 15 years and 181 days old, 15 and a half years old, playing for one of the biggest clubs in Europe. But let's hypothetically say 18. You sign for a team at 18. The Premier League in itself has 38 games a season. There's also the cup competitions, the FA Cup, the League Cup, and then any European competition a team may be involved in, the Champions League. If a team, Liverpool, I think it was last year, got to the final of 3 of those cups, Champions League final, FA Cup final, League Cup final. Yeah, so we were just discussing the sort of hypothetical example of a player that signs a professional contract at 18 years old, the age that they would go to college with a professional team. If the player could potentially then play, there's all the league games, FA Cup, League Cup, Champions League or Europa League if they're in European competition, as Chelsea typically are. That's sort of potentially 60-ish, 50 to 65 games per season that player could potentially play in. At the NCAA level, you're allowed 20 games per season.
That's it?
That's it. And that includes preseason games, and you can choose how you structure that. You could do 2 and 18 or 1 and 19. And then you have your postseason. So that's regular season. So we'll take the ACC. Brilliant men's soccer conference, right? A lot of good teams. You play the full regular season, that's 20 games. Some of those games are going to be against very good opposition, which is other ACC teams. Still 18 to 22 years old, the players. Then you have the postseason, however many games it takes to win the ACC tournament, should we say, maybe 3 or 4. And then the national tournament, I think will be a maximum of 6 maybe. So we're looking at maybe 30 games in the fall, and then in the spring you're allowed, at Division 1 level, you're allowed a maximum of 5 dates. You can choose to play 5 90-minute games. You can enter a tournament for a day, so you play more over the course of a day, but you're only allowed that many competitions in the spring, 5 dates of any type of competition. So even, we'd say 35, not all of which are going to be against
top tier
high-level opposition, and certainly not the level you'd be playing against in the Bundesliga or Serie A or the Premier League. And then you times that by 4 before the draft. If you play 4 years of college and then enter the draft, then an NCAA player may play 120 games in 4 years against college opposition. A player that signed a professional contract at the age of 18 could end up playing in that same 4-year period, maybe 200 games against quality opposition in a professional environment in front of big crowds that more closely represents what they'd be facing when they play for the US national team, for example.
For sure.
So if a player has that choice at 18 to go to college or to sign a professional contract, you could argue that from a playing standpoint and gaining experience and developing quicker, it may be better to go the professional route. And again, to say for context, obviously the NCAA as a concept is brilliant because it gives you this platform to play collegiate, play sports across that age bracket, shall we say, versus, let's say you leave high school and you don't go the NCAA route, or you choose to go vocationally, then you perhaps wouldn't be playing any of those sports at that level with that degree of organisation that you get at the NCAA. So it's wonderful in that sense that it gives players the opportunity to utilise athletics and sport participation as a vehicle to get an education, to develop them as a professional in another field.
Yes.
You referred to the life lessons you can gain from sport and utilise in other fields. Classic. Student athletes, NCAA student athletes, are getting that experience all the way through their education as well, their college education. And then obviously in the major professional sports, which is really at the centre of it, like the basketballs and the American footballs and baseball. Yeah. Play in college, go through the draft system, go on to the next level. Right. Which obviously the NBA is the best basketball league in the world, the NFL is the best American football league in the world. That's the accepted pathway and the traditional pathway. And obviously soccer, as a member of the NCAA, is modelled on that. But the argument could be made that, again, in the sport of men's soccer, for that elite group of top players, it can be potentially detrimental to their career, because the players entering the professional game at 22 years old after college would be significantly less developed than players that have been in the professional game already for 4 years. Right.
We talk about Pulisic. He was in, was it Dartmouth? I forget how to pronounce it. He's been playing pro overseas since he's been 16. Yeah,
absolutely. In Germany. Yeah, and Borussia Dortmund.
Yeah,
and so and I think Klinsmann was trying to make that argument. And there's validity to it. I think. Obviously, there are reasons why it exists this way.
Yes.
And the objective of the objective of an entity at the head of an organisation, a sporting organisation like a soccer federation, their objective is primarily to develop players for the senior team and have a successful senior team. The objective of the NCAA is not that. No. The objective of the NCAA is to provide a platform and participation opportunities for student athletes while they gain an education, and then for the 99.9% of athletes that don't go professional, it's a fantastic experience because they leave with a degree, they leave with 4 years of fantastic experiences, playing, memories, friends, etc. And then many of them will still go on and have a professional career. But in terms of that top elite group in men's soccer, that those paths are very different in terms of the crucial periods of a professional career from the age of 18 to 22. If you say a full professional career lasts maybe 12 to 15 years, in some cases slightly more, that's 4 years out of 10 to 15 years. It's a significant chunk of that career. And those paths are very different. The NCAA path versus the professional path.
Yes,
now it's important we add the context here. There are many excellent players who are performing brilliantly in the international game and the professional game that came through the college system. It's an excellent system. But it is different to the path of a professional player in other countries. And I think Klinsmann had certain views on that, and as his role of technical director started those discussions, I think. But it's such an immovable object, I think, if you like.